The DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro recently released, and I absolutely love to use it on bike rides and just everyday capturing of life. It comes with some incredible specs that really can make your footage look cinematic if you know how to properly set it up and fix it in post-production afterwards. So in the video today, I'll go over every little setting I feel like you need to change to get the most out of your DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro action camera. I'll also show you a little bit about how you get D-Log M color space transferred over to Rec. 709, which is the standard color space that you're used to seeing. And then I'll also introduce you to a little bit of some color grading so you have some understanding of how to make your footage pop. So grab a cup of coffee, sit down and relax. First of all, what actually makes this action camera so great? The biggest reason as for why this action camera is so great is the large 1/1/3 inch camera sensor, which is quite a big sensor for an action camera. And generally, the bigger the sensor, the better the quality. This action camera also has a 10-bit D-Log M picture profile with 13.5 stops of dynamic range, which essentially does that you can capture more color information and thereby get more details in the brightest and darkest parts of the image. This essentially means that you get extremely great image quality out of the camera. And it also means that you get a lot more flexibility to grade the footage afterwards to just the way you like it. And this also makes it way easier to match the colors to your other more expensive cameras if you wish to do so. Because all the different manufacturers interpret the colors look in different ways, so being able to match them up without the image falling apart is great. As an example, this is how Sony cameras capture the world, and this is how DJI capture the world. I personally ain't a big fan of DJI's color interpretation, since I always find the colors a bit too saturated. So I'm super glad to have the option to simply change the way it looks afterwards. So if you want to get the most out of your action camera, make sure that you use a 10-bit profile, preferably the D-Log M profile for the extra flexibility. Even if you don't want to color grade the footage, I still recommend you to use the D-Log M profile simply for the extra flexibility, because it can really save your footage in rare situations where you have, well, let me say this politely, fucked up the recordings. It has happened sometimes, so it's nice to have the ability to fix it in post. The D-Log M is by no means new, but it's definitely my preferred setting for this action camera, and actually also my Mini 4 Pro drone, because here I use the same setting. So I highly recommend you to use it as well. Next thing to do is to choose the amount of pixels you want to shoot in. Most of the time I recommend 4K, even if you don't intend to output the project in 4K. The simple reason for that is that you have the ability to crop in post and still get a nice looking image. I like to use the 4:3 aspect ratio because I like to use the footage for both vertical and horizontal videos. And well, this helps with that. Which stabilization feature and lens range you want to use is very much dependent on how you intend to use the camera. I'm probably gonna use the Rocksteady ultra wide feature the most, but I know that a lot of people that flies FPV drones would turn off the stabilization completely, simply because they're gonna use GyroFlow afterwards, which is a stabilization software. The difference between Rocksteady Plus and the normal Rocksteady isn't that big a difference in my opinion. So I'm just gonna stick with the normal version, since that makes it possible to use a much wider field of view. If you're looking to make your footage more cinematic, the first step to do so is simply to change the shutter speed to be double your frame rate. If you, for example, shoot in 25 FPS, your shutter speed should then be 1/150th of a second. And if you shoot in 50 FPS, your shutter speed should then be 1/100 of a second. This rule applies to all the other frame rates as well, whether it's 24, 60 or 120. This ensures that you get the most natural looking motion blur, because if you don't follow this rule, the footage will be a bit choppy, which is not how you see the world, and it doesn't look that professional. A camera such as this action camera doesn't have dual native ISO like my FX3 camera. So every ISO above 1600 seems to become quite grainy and, in my opinion, almost unusable. So to get the best looking results, set it to 100 to 1600 ISO. or in some situations a specific ISO, like for example 100. I'll always recommend you to get some ND filters. I have ordered some, but they still haven't arrived yet. I might actually have to look into that. I don't know why they haven't come yet. But anyway, ND filters acts as sunglasses for your camera, so whenever it's not possible to uphold the 180 degrees shutter rule that states that your shutter speed should be double your frame rate, these filters will darken the outside world for you, exactly like sunglasses. This is mostly used whenever we have some harsh sunlight outside, or at like sunsets and like, yeah, mostly just outside actually. It's a bit harder to work with ND filters, but you will also get a much more smooth looking result. The white balance on the camera I always recommend you to change depending on the environment, but I also know that a lot of people don't know how to change it to the right parameters, so I'll probably just recommend you to keep it on auto white balance, for most of you at least. In the image adjustment settings, I also like to turn down the texture by -1, since action cameras have a tendency to be a little bit too sharp. A lot of people will say that you should turn down both the texture as well as the noise reduction to -2, but then I kind of feel like it becomes too blurry or smeary, so -1% in the texture tab is more than fine in my opinion. But this is a little bit more opinion based. Now that your action camera is set up to produce the best looking image, then how do you go about fixing the footage in your editing software? Okay, now let me show you how to tackle the footage in Premiere Pro, which is the program I use. Drag some footage to the timeline. This footage is in a 3:4 aspect ratio, so I can just scale it up to like 144%. And then we get a great looking result. And since I've recorded it in 4K, I can easily just scale it up and retain a lot of quality without it just falling apart, which it would do if you were just recording it in 1080p. Kind of the way I like to color correct and color grade my stuff is, first of all, let me just zoom into the timeline a bit. What I then do is that I add an adjustment layer. Yeah, like that. And just drag it down to the timeline. What I then do is that I hold down Alt or Option and then creates another one. Then I like to give it a color, just so I can see the difference. Let's say forest, and let's say cerulean. The lowest adjustment layer I usually use the conversion LUT on, which we have just downloaded on DJI's website. And the adjustment layer above, I usually put my color grade. On the first one, go up to lumetri control, go under basic correction, input LUT, and then browse for the LUT we have just downloaded. And then just press open. It says open, which is open in Danish. And now your footage is converted to Rec 709. This is before and this is after. The difference now is just that you have a lot more flexibility, so you can easily just drag up the exposure or down with the exposure depending on the situation and the way you like your footage, and it will still retain its full quality without making some banding in, let's say, the skies, which is what you usually see, is that some banding comes in the skies. What you can easily then do is that you can go down to like the color wheels and match, and maybe like drag in some blues into the shadows, like this maybe, and maybe some orange into the midtones, and then you get a great looking color grade. What I usually do is that I go under the creative tab and then I choose my own LUT pack, which I have right here. And for this instance, let's choose Sandy Cinema. I kind of like that one. Sandy Cinema is quite orange, which fits quite well with sunsets, I feel like. And it also tones down the blues in the sky a bit, so it is quite nice for sunsets in my opinion. Desert Desire can also be great for sunsets, but I mostly like to use Sandy Cinema. It is, however, a bit strong right now, so I'll just drag it down to like, let's say, I think it's like 50-ish. I kind of like it at. So if I just put in 50, that looks nice. Sometimes some bending can also happen in the sky, so it's always great to just tone down the grade a bit. That was before and that's after. And this is how it looks, which is quite nice. So this is how you convert D-Log M to Rec 709 in Premiere Pro. There are some different ways to do the same, and it's also different depending on the program you use. But I have in another video actually shown how to do it within DaVinci Resolve. And my LUT pack you can check out in the description below. So this is how you fix D-Log M to look quite normal. Oh yeah, and by the way, the light that I'm using right there is the Zhiyuns C100, which you also can check out in the description below. It's a super nice portable RGB light, which I use in almost all my videos. I also actually have another one, the CF100 from Zhiyuns, which is right here. It can also switch the color hue to something else if you want to. But they are super nice to have with you everywhere. And I use them all the time because they are so portable and easy to set up everywhere. It's a great way to get a cinematic image. But I'm gonna talk about the C100 in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. So don't forget to subscribe. This action camera is probably one of the best, if not the best, action camera on the market right now. I'm actually also considering getting into flying FPV drones, and here this action camera would be an enormous help, since it would make some great looking footage flying on hills and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to what I can create with this little action camera. I have the adventure combo pack, so I also have this rod with me, which is kind of nice. So it's easy just to put it on a stick and place it anywhere. And yeah, I have just stolen this from my DJI RS3, so it's also easy to just place anywhere and just get amazing looking footage. It's also super nice that they can be connected to the DJI Mic 2s, but I don't have them, haven't bought them, might have to actually, since most of DJI's products have the ability to connect them up wirelessly, which is super nice. The DJI Neo, which I recently also reviewed, also has the ability to use the DJI mics, so I really might have to get the DJI Mic 2s. I have the DJI Mic 1s, but they don't have that feature, it's only the 2s. I've also bought a few accessories so I can mount the camera to my bicycle, so in general this camera is gonna be amazing for the upcoming footage I can make. This was all I had for you today. If you want to check the camera out, I would really appreciate if you used my affiliate link in the description. I always highly appreciate if you use that. Other than that, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and see you in the next one. I'm out.